The huge crystal room was filled with strange sounds and colors. Admiral Li Taewon stood in the middle with heavy metal chains around his hands and feet. His blue uniform was torn in many places, but his dark eyes still burned with anger and strength. The room was bigger than any building on Earth, with walls made of clear crystal that reached up so high you could not see the top. Thousands of alien beings sat in floating chairs that moved slowly around the room like a giant circle. Some aliens, who had blue skin with 6 long arms, others looked like tall trees with moving branches instead of legs. There were creatures that glowed like stars and some that looked like big insects with shiny wings. The air smelled different here, like metal and flowers mixed together. High Chancellor Vorthok was the biggest alien in the room. He had bright blue skin that seemed to shine under the strange lights. His 6 arms moved as he talked, and each arm was as thick as a human leg. On his head he wore a golden crown with floating gems that changed colors. The other aliens seemed afraid of him. When he moved his huge staff made of white crystal, everyone became quietly. Taewon had been standing here for 3 hours, but he did not feel tired. He was a soldier, and soldiers knew how to wait. He looked around the room and counted the exits. He noticed which aliens carried weapons and which ones looked scared. This was not his first time being a prisoner, but it might be his last. The walls around them showed moving pictures of Earth, human cities burning, human ships exploding in space, human soldiers fighting against alien forces. The pictures made the alien audience make strange sounds. Some covered their eyes with tentacles, others made clicking noises that sounded like fear. Dr. Park Yoon-ji stood next to Li Taewon. She was Earth's smartest person for talking to aliens. Her long black hair was messy and her white coat had burn marks on it. The energy chains around her arms glowed blue and made buzzing sounds. She had tried to speak for humanity many times, but the council did not want to listen. The floating screens showed more pictures of human history, wars between countries, weapons being tested, armies marching across fields. The aliens had never seen anything like this. Most alien races had stopped fighting thousands of years ago. They lived quiet, peaceful lives where no one ever got angry or violent. Chancellor Vorthok raised his crystal staff high above his head. The floating gems in his crown spun faster and brighter when he spoke. His voice was so deep it made the crystal walls shake. All the other aliens stopped their chattering and buzzing and clicking. We have watched the humans for 50 Earth years, he said. His voice echoed through the huge room. They are not like us. They do not want peace. They only want to fight and destroy. They have wars on their own planet. They build weapons that can kill millions. They teach their children to be Pictures on the walls changed to show human children playing with toy guns and toy soldiers. The alien audience made more scared sounds. Some of the smaller aliens hid behind the bigger ones. A few aliens got up from their floating chairs and moved farther away from the humans, but Park Yoon-ji stepped forward even though the energy chains tried to hold her back. "You do not understand us," she said. Her voice was much smaller than the Chancellor's, but it was strong. "You see our weapons, but you do not see why we made them. You see our wars, but you do not see what we were fighting for. We fight to protect our families," she continued. "We build weapons to stop bad people from hurting good people. We teach our children to be strong because the universe, it is dangerous. You have forgotten what it means to fight for something important." The Chancellor made a sound like thunder. "We do not need to fight," he said. "We have peace, we have order, we have control. The humans bring only chaos. They make other species. I want to fight too. They are like a disease that spreads from planet to planet." Li Taewon smiled when he heard this. The council was afraid. That was good. When your enemy was afraid, they made mistakes, and the council was about to make a very big mistake. More pictures appeared on the walls, showing human colonies on other planets. The aliens had been watching humans spread across the galaxy for years. They saw how humans helped other species fight back against bullies. They saw how humans shared their technology and food. They saw how humans never gave up even when things looked impossible. The council members started talking to each other in their strange languages. Some sounded like birds singing, others sounded like machines beeping. A few sounded like water bubbling. The noise got louder and louder until Chancellor Vorthok hit his staff on the crystal floor. Commander Kim Do-hein watched everything from a high balcony where prisoners' families could sit. His hand rested on a small weapon hidden under his jacket. The council guards had searched him, but they did not know about human tricks for hiding things. He was not the only human in the room who was armed. The council thought they had caught all the dangerous humans, but they were wrong. Humans were everywhere in the galaxy now. Some worked as traders, some were explorers, some were scientists, and some were soldiers waiting for the right moment to strike. The vote began. Each alien spoke in their own language, and their words appeared as symbols on the crystal walls. Li Taewon could not read the alien writing, but he could count one by one. Every single council member voted the same way. Chancellor Vorthok stood up to his full height, which was 3 times taller than any human. "The decision is made," he announced. "Humanity will be locked on their home planet forever. Their ships will be destroyed. Their colonies will be emptied. Any human found in space will be killed immediately." The alien audience made happy sounds. They thought the galaxy would be safe now. They thought humans would just accept this judgment and stay on Earth forever. They did not understand humans. At Park Yoon-ji looked at Li Taewon and saw him smiling. This confused her. How could he smile when their entire species had just been sentenced to prison on their own planet? But Li Taewon knew something the council did not know. While The council had been having meetings and debates. Human ships had been moving to secret positions all across the galaxy. Human engineers had been building new weapons. Human spies had been learning alien secrets. Human leaders had been making friends with other species who hated the council. The council had just made humanity into one. The thing it had never really been before, a completely united species. Every human on Earth and in the colonies would now have the same enemy. Every human would now fight for the same cause. The council thought they were ending the human problem, but they had just made it much, much worse. As the crystal staff came down to make the judgment finally, Taiwan stopped smiling and looked directly at Chancellor Vorthok. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had survived ice ages and meteor strikes, and every other terrible thing their planet had thrown at them. The council had decided humanity's fate, but humanity was about to decide the council's fate instead. The council warship Eternal Harmony moved slowly through the Vega star system like a giant metal shark hunting for prey. Captain Zeltrox stood on his command bridge feeling very pleased with himself. His ship was 3 times bigger than any human vessel, and his weapons could destroy entire planets. 3 months ago, Captain Zeltrox had personally watched human colonies burn in this system. The humans had fought like wild animals, but they were no match for council technology. Their ships had exploded in bright flashes of light, and their bases had crumbled into dust and rock. Now, the Vega system belonged to the council again. The trade routes were safe and peaceful. The mining operations ran smoothly without human interference. Captain Zeltrox believed he had solved the human problem in this part of the galaxy forever, but Captain Zeltrox was wrong. Major Kong Su Min watched the council ship from her hidden base on Vega Prime's largest moon. Her observation post was built inside an old crater and covered with special materials that made it invisible to alien sensors. She had been tracking council movements for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. The human colonies that Captain Zeltrox thought he had destroyed were still very much alive. The explosions and fires had been fake, created with holographic projectors and chemical bombs that made lots of smoke, but did not actually hurt anyone. While the council celebrated their victory, the real human settlements had been safely hidden in asteroid belts and gas clouds. Corporal Nom Ji Yoon worked at a communication station filled with screens showing alien writing and star maps. She had become an expert at reading council battle codes and could predict their ship movements days before they happened. The council commanders thought their messages were secret, but humans had learned to break their codes. Months ago, they are running the same patrol pattern again, Nam reported to Major Kong. Captain Zeltrox thinks he is being careful, but he flies the same route every 3 days. His ship will pass through the asteroid field at exactly 1400 hours. The moon base was a masterpiece of human engineering, mixed with stolen alien technology. The walls were made from council metal that could stop energy weapons, but human workers had improved the design to make it stronger and lighter. The power systems used alien energy cores, but human modifications made them produce twice as much electricity. Jung Woo Song ran out of his laboratory with excitement written all over his face. He was carrying a small device that looked like a metal cube with glowing blue lines. Major Kong, we have done something amazing, he said, his voice shaking with joy. He activated the device, and suddenly everything in the room began to float. Tables and chairs and tools all lifted off the floor and hung in the air like they weighed nothing. Major Kong reached out to touch a floating wrench and found she could move it around with just her finger. The council has been using gravity control technology for thousands of years, Dr. Zhang explained. But their machines are huge and need massive amounts of power and take forever to calculate the right settings. Our version runs on a simple battery and responds to thoughts. This was happening everywhere. Humans had survived the council purge. They did not just copy alien technology, they made it better. Council energy weapons that fired in straight lines were modified to create spiraling beams that could go around corners. Ships designed for peaceful exploration became fast attack vessels that could outrun anything in the council fleet. But the most important human discovery was not about machines or weapons. It was about friendship. The Resistance had made contact with dozens of alien species who secretly hated the Council but had been too afraid to fight back alone. The Corvani were fish-like beings who lived in the oceans of Waterworld's Council mining operations had poisoned their seas and killed millions of their people. They had been looking for a way to fight back for centuries, but they thought it was hopeless until humans showed them that the Council could be beaten. The Threnody were insect creatures who lived in underground hives. Their old queen had refused to let the Council build weapon factories on their planet, so Council forces had killed her and taken control of their world. The Threnody workers had been planning revenge ever since. The Yaxri were beings made of pure energy who had been enslaved by the Council to power their machines and computers. They could not fight with guns or ships, but they could overload power systems and disable electronic equipment across entire planets. Each species brought different skills and knowledge to the human resistance. The Corvani were experts at hiding things underwater, and their submarines could move through space as easily as through oceans. The Threnody could dig tunnel systems that connected planets to each other through subspace. The Yaxri could turn Council technology against itself. Kong received reports from resistance cells across the galaxy every day. More species joined the fight against Council rule. Mining worlds were sabotaging their equipment. Factory planets were producing weapons for rebels. Instead of goods for the Council, transport ships were disappearing with their cargo, ending up in Resistance hands. The Council had created the exact situation they had tried to prevent by trying to destroy humanity. They had turned every oppressed species in the galaxy into potential allies. For thousands of years, alien races had lived in fear, accepting Council rule because they thought they had no choice. Then humans arrived, humans who fought impossible battles and sometimes won, humans who helped strangers even when it put them in danger. Humans who believed that freedom was worth dying for. These ideas spread from planet to planet like a virus that the Council could not stop. Captain Zeltrox continued his patrol, completely unaware that he was being watched by hundreds of hidden sensors. His ship passed through the asteroid field right on schedule, just as the humans had predicted. He felt safe and in control, believing that the human threat had been eliminated. But as his ship moved toward the outer planets, Major Kong smiled and activated her communications system. Soon Captain Zeltrox would learn that the humans he thought he had killed were very much alive, and they had spent the last 3 months teaching the galaxy how incredibly stupid the Council had been. The Resistance was no longer just about humans fighting for survival. It had become something much bigger, a galaxy-wide revolution that would change everything. The Council had made their choice when they decided to eliminate humanity. Now humanity and their allies were about to show the Council what that choice would cost them. The awakening had begun, and there would be no going back. Nexus Prime had never been attacked in 3,000 years. The massive space fortress floated in the center of the galaxy like a metal planet covered with weapon towers and shield generators. It was the home of the Council Military Command and their most secret research laboratories. Everyone in the galaxy knew that Nexus Prime could not be conquered. General Yudong Wook did not believe in impossible things. He stood on the command bridge of his flagship, watching the greatest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. His ship was called Retribution Edge, and it used to belong to the Council until human engineers captured it and made it into something much more dangerous. The ship looked completely different now. Where the Council had built smooth curved walls, humans had added angular armor plating and weapon ports. The elegant alien design had been replaced with something that looked like a metal predator ready to strike. Human modifications covered every surface, making the ship faster, stronger, and more deadly than its original builders had ever imagined. Captain Bei Sun, he worked at the communication station, sending coded messages to Resistance fleets across the galaxy. The ghost fleets were ready, she reported. These were Council ships that had been captured or stolen by the Resistance and rebuilt with human technology to Council sensors. They looked like legitimate vessels, responding to emergency calls. The revolution had spread faster than anyone expected. The Corvani had poisoned the water systems on 17 Council worlds, forcing the aliens to evacuate their most important colonies. The Threnody had turned their mining operations into weapon factories, producing guns and bombs for rebel forces. The Axery had overloaded power grids across dozens of systems, leaving Council bases in darkness. What started as human resistance had become something much bigger, a galaxy-wide uprising that involved hundreds of species who had been waiting for someone to show them how to fight back. The Council had spent thousands of years believing that their control was absolute. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Lieutenant Colonel Park Min-jung led the assault team that would infiltrate Nexus Prime. From the insider team included humans and aliens who had never worked together before but who now fought as brothers and sisters against their common enemy. "We are not here to destroy everything," she told her team as they prepared to board the attack shuttles. "We are here to free the galaxy from tyrants. Remember that many of the people on that station are prisoners." Just like we used to. The attack began with what looked like routine supply ships requesting permission to dock at Nexus Prime. Council security had become lazy after thousands of years of peace. They approved the docking requests without running detailed scans on the ships. By the time they realized their mistake, human soldiers were already inside the station. Colonel Lee Sang-hook led the engineering team that disabled the massive defense platforms. The weapons that had protected Nexus Prime for centuries were turned against the Council fleet that rushed to defend the fortress within minutes. The most powerful military base in the galaxy was using its own guns to destroy its own ships, but the real victory was not about weapons or battles. Commander Kim Young-soo took control of the station's communication systems and began broadcasting across the galaxy. The message was not propaganda or threats, it was something much more dangerous than any weapon, the truth. For the first time, billions of beings across the galaxy heard about the species that had been exterminated for refusing to obey Council orders. They learned about planets that had been stripped of all resources and left as dead rocks floating in space. They discovered that Council peace had been built on the graves of countless civilizations. The broadcast showed evidence that the Council had been lying about everything. They claimed to protect weak species, but actually they enslaved them. They said they prevented wars, but actually they started them. They promised prosperity, but actually they stole everything valuable and left worlds to starve. As the truth spread across the galaxy, Council authority began to collapse on hundreds of worlds. Species that had been afraid to resist for thousands of years suddenly found the courage to fight back. Council governors were overthrown. Council tax collectors were arrested. Council military bases were surrounded by angry crowds demanding freedom and The water world of Aquatica, the Corvani, rose up from their poisoned oceans and destroyed every council facility on the planet. On the desert world of Zarian, the Threnody emerged from their underground cities and took control of the weapon factories. On the energy world of Lumina, the Yaxari overloaded every council computer system and erased their databases. High Chancellor Vorthok watched from his command center as his empire fell apart around him. Reports came in every few minutes about new rebellions and lost worlds. His 6 arms trembled with rage as he realized the magnitude of the council's mistakes. Humans had not just been defeated, they had been turned into martyrs. Their destruction had inspired every oppressed species in the galaxy to remember what freedom meant. The council had created the very enemy they had tried to prevent. We must negotiate, Vorthok announced to his shocked advisors. Contact the human leaders and offer them terms for surrender. But his advisors looked at him with expressions of disbelief. Chancellor, the humans are not the ones who need to surrender, came the reply. They are winning. Across the galaxy, the revolution continued to spread. Like a fire that jumped from planet to planet, the desire for freedom could not be stopped. Species that had never heard of humans were fighting for the same ideals that humanity had brought to the stars: the right to choose their own destiny, the right to live without fear, the right to say no to tyrants. The council had decided humanity's fate, but humanity had taught the galaxy to decide its own fate instead. The revolution was no longer about humans fighting for survival, it was about every species fighting for the right to exist as free beings. Nexus Prime continued to burn as rebel fleets arrived from every corner of the galaxy. The fortress that had been a symbol of council power was becoming a symbol of council defeat. The galaxy was learning that even the mightiest tyrants could fall when free beings stood together. The revolution had begun and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 months had passed since the council made their terrible decision. Captain Shin Yu-jin crawled through the dark rocky tunnels of the asteroid mining station. Her black suit made her invisible against the rough stone walls. The suit was made from stolen alien technology, but human engineers had made it much better than the original. The asteroid was called Kepler 442 billion, and it was supposed to be empty of all humans. The council forces had come here 5 weeks ago with their bright white ships and energy weapons. They told everyone that all humans had to leave or be destroyed. Most of the mining families had packed their things and left on the big transport ships, but Captain Shin knew that humans were like the weeds that grew in Earth gardens. You could pull them up and burn them and poison the ground, but somehow they always came back stronger than before. She moved carefully through the tunnel system that the miners had carved over many years. Sergeant Choi Min-ho was somewhere behind her in the darkness. His job was to watch for the flying robot guards that the council had left to patrol the tunnels. These robots were small and quiet and they could see in the dark, but humans had learned to trick them by moving very slowly and staying close to the metal or in the rocks. The tunnel system was much bigger than anyone knew. The official maps showed only the main mining shafts, but the workers had dug secret passages everywhere. Some led to hidden storage rooms where they kept extra food and supplies. Others connected to natural caves that were too small for the big council ships to see. Shin heard a soft clicking sound in her earpiece. It was Choi telling her that robot guards were coming. She pressed herself against the tunnel wall and held very still. The robots made a humming sound as they flew past, their blue lights sweeping back and forth across the rocks. They were looking for humans, but they did not find any. After the robots passed, Shin continued deeper into the asteroid. The air got warmer and she started to hear sounds, music and voices, and the noise of machines working. She smiled because she knew what this meant. The reports were true. Humans were still here and they were not hiding anymore. Tunnel opened into a huge cave that had been carved out of solid rock. The cave was so big that it could hold a dozen Earth buildings and still have room left over. But what Shin saw inside made her eyes go wide with surprise. Hundreds of humans were working everywhere. Some were building weapons at metal tables. Others were fixing damaged spaceships that hung from chains attached to the cave ceiling. Still others were working on computers and communication equipment that glowed with alien symbols. The people here were supposed to be dead. The council had announced that all humans in this system had been relocated to Earth, but these people had refused to go. They had hidden in the deep tunnels. When the council ships came, they had waited until the aliens left, and then they had started building. Captain Park Hyun-woo walked over to greet Shin. His face had long scars from council energy weapons, and his left arm was in a metal brace, but his eyes were bright and happy. "Welcome to Ghost Station Alpha," he said. "We are officially dead, but we have never felt more alive." He led her through the busy cave, showing her all the amazing things the humans had built. They had taken broken council technology and made it work better than new alien energy guns that used to overheat after 10 shots now could fire 100 times without stopping. Council computer systems that took hours to start up now worked in seconds. Humans had not just copied the alien technology, they had understood it and improved it. Dr. Song Ha-young was working on a council communication device that she had taken apart and put back together. The device used to only work for short distances, but now it could send messages across entire solar systems. "We learned that the council races stopped trying to make things better thousands of years ago," Dr. Song explained. "They found technology that worked, and then they never changed it. But humans always want to make things better. We cannot help ourselves, Lieutenant." Nam Ju-yoon was monitoring council radio messages from a station covered with blinking lights and moving screens. She had learned to speak and read 17 different alien languages in just 3 months. The council commanders thought their secret codes were impossible to break, but humans loved solving puzzles. The council forces are planning another sweep of the outer planets in 2 days, she reported. They think they are hunting the last few human rebels, but they have no idea how many of us are really out here. Captain Park showed Shin a wall covered with star maps that had red dots marking secret human bases. There were 43 bases in this system alone, and each one was hidden inside asteroids or old mining stations or abandoned alien outposts. The council thought they had removed all humans from 12 solar systems, but humans were living in every single one. The best part was that humans were not alone anymore. Other alien species had started helping them. The Corvani were water creatures whose home planet had been poisoned by council mining operations. They hated the council and were happy to hide human bases in their underwater cities. The Threnody were insect-like aliens whose leaders had been killed by the council. For refusing to give up their independence, they were excellent at digging tunnels and hiding things underground. Many human bases were connected to Threnody nest cities that went deep into planet cores of, and some former council species were secretly helping humans. The Axari were energy beings who had been forced to power council machines for hundreds of years. They were teaching humans how to use energy weapons and shields in ways the council had never imagined. But the most important thing, what the humans had learned, was not about technology, it was about hope. For thousands of years, alien species had been afraid to fight back against the council. They thought the council was too strong and too smart to be beaten. Then humans came along. Humans who refused to surrender even when they were outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Humans who kept fighting even when their cities were burning. Humans who would rather die free than live as slaves. Other species watched humans fight impossible battles. And sometimes when they watched humans help strangers even when it put them in danger. They watched humans share food and medicine and weapons with anyone who needed help. Suddenly the galaxy was full of species who remembered what it felt like to be angry about injustice. They remembered what it felt like to want something better for their children. They remembered that being alive meant more than just not being dead. As alarms started making noise throughout the cave, everyone moved with practiced speed. Within 2 minutes the cave looked empty again. The workers had disappeared into hidden rooms behind false walls. The equipment had been covered with sheets that made it look like old mining gear. The ships had been moved into secret hangars carved deeper in the rock. Council patrol ships flew past the asteroid without stopping. Their sensors showed only an abandoned mining station with no signs of life. But deep in the rocks, hundreds of humans continued their work building weapons and ships in hope. Captain Shin smiled as she watched the council ships disappear into space. The aliens thought they were hunting a few desperate survivors hiding in caves, but they were wrong. They were being hunted by an entire galaxy that had finally learned to say no. The underground was growing stronger every day, and soon it would be time to come into the light. 6 months after the fall of Nexus Prime, the galaxy was a completely different place. Ambassador OG-1 stood before the newly formed Galactic Alliance assembly in the massive meeting hall on Harmony Station. The station had been built in neutral, a space where no single species could claim ownership. The Great Hall buzzed with hundreds of different voices speaking in languages that had never been heard together before. For the first time in galactic history, every species had an equal vote. In deciding the future, it did not matter if they were big or small, powerful or weak, rich or poor. Every world got the same say in making the rules. Where the old council chamber had been turned into a memorial for all the beings who had died under council rule. Now representatives from every corner of the galaxy worked together to build something better than what had come before. The walls were covered with the names of extinct species and destroyed worlds so that no one would forget the cost of tyranny. The Human Accords had established new laws for galactic civilization. No species could be forced to join the alliance. No world could have its resources stolen without permission. No race could be eliminated just for being different. These were not just words on paper, they were promises backed by the combined military might of hundreds of worlds working together. President Lee Min-jun of the United Earth Government spoke to the assembly with words that would be remembered for thousands of years. We did not fight to conquer the galaxy, he said. We fought so that every being could have the right to choose their own path. The council tried to create peace through fear and control. We choose to build it through friendship and cooperation. The transformation had not been easy. Some former council species found it hard to accept democracy after thousands of years of being told what to do. Others tried to keep their old privileges and continue treating other species as slaves, but the Alliance had the strength to enforce its new principles. Captain Han So-young commanded one of the new Alliance patrol fleets. Her ships were crewed by beings from dozens of different worlds working together as one crew. Her first officer was a Corvani whose home planet had been saved from ecological disaster. Her chief engineer was a former council technician who had joined the rebellion after seeing how humans treated their prisoners with kindness. The patrol fleets were not meant to conquer or control other worlds. They protected trade routes from pirates, responded to natural disasters, and prevented any single species from bullying others. The galaxy was learning that true strength came from helping each other, instead of hurting each other. Da Choi Hai-jin worked in one of the new research centers where human creativity combined with alien knowledge to solve problems that had troubled the galaxy for thousands of years. Diseases that had killed entire species were being cured, worlds that had been considered uninhabitable were being transformed into garden planets. Energy sources that had been hoarded by the Council were now being shared freely. The research stations were like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Scientists from hundreds of species worked side by side, sharing their knowledge and learning from each other. Humans brought their talent for innovation and improvement. Corvani brought their understanding of water and ocean. Systems Threnody brought their knowledge of underground engineering. Yaxri brought their mastery of energy manipulation. Together they achieved miracles that none of them could have accomplished alone. Planets that had been dead for centuries were brought back to life. Refugee populations were given new homes. Space travel became faster and safer than ever before. Medical treatments that had been available only to the wealthy were now given to everyone who needed them. But perhaps the greatest change was in the spirit of the galaxy itself. Where once fear had kept species isolated and suspicious, now curiosity and cooperation flourished. Young beings from different worlds traveled together as students and explorers. Artists and musicians shared their cultures across the stars. Scientists made discoveries that benefited everyone. The Alliance had learned from humanity's example that diversity made civilization stronger, not weaker. Different species brought different talents and perspectives that enriched everyone. When the Corvani taught humans about underwater farming techniques, food production increased dramatically. When humans taught the Threnody about surface agriculture, the insect beings were able to feed their growing population. Of former council worlds were beginning to prosper under the new system. The species that had been oppressed for generations were rediscovering their own cultures and traditions. Languages that had been forbidden were being spoken again. Art and music that had been banned were being celebrated. The galaxy was still full of challenges. New threats would emerge from unexplored regions. Pirates and criminals would try to take advantage of the transition. Some species would resist the changes and try to return to the old ways. But the Alliance had something the Council had never possessed: the willing cooperation of free beings who chose to work together. Ambassador O looked out at the assembly hall and watched former enemies debate legislation to protect refugee rights. He saw species that had been at war for centuries working together to solve trade disputes. She witnessed the birth of a new kind of civilization based on mutual respect and shared prosperity. The transformation was not complete and might never be. Many worlds still struggled with the legacy of Council rule. Some species found it difficult to trust others after generations of oppression, but every day brought new examples of cooperation and friendship that would have been impossible under the old system. Children who had grown up under Council tyranny were now learning about freedom and democracy. Young beings from different species were forming friendships that crossed traditional boundaries. The future belonged to a generation that would know cooperation instead of domination. As the assembly session ended for the day, Ambassador O walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with countless worlds and billions of beings. Each one now had the right to choose their own destiny. The Council had tried to decide humanity's fate by condemning them to imprisonment on Earth, but humanity had refused to accept that judgment. Instead, they had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most important word in any language was no. No to oppression, no to slavery, no to the idea that some beings were worth less than others. And from that simple word had grown something beautiful: a civilization based on choice rather than force, a society that celebrated differences instead of fearing them, a galaxy where every being had the right to dream of a better tomorrow. The stars shone brightly in the darkness, reminding everyone that even in the vast emptiness of space, hope could still flourish. The Council had believed that peace required control, but the Alliance had proven that true peace came from freedom. The new dawn had arrived, and it belonged to everyone.